An essential task as a small unit leader, whether you're sitting in the defense or in a patrol base, is punching out what are called LPOPs, listening posts and observation posts. These posts will give your unit advance notice of an enemy's approach. In this episode of Infantryman's Guide, we're going to be looking at some tactical considerations and deployment of LPOPs. Thanks for watching. So one of the most important things we need to do upon coming into and setting into the defense or a patrol base is punching out those LPOPs, punching out those listening posts, observation posts. Those are our first line of defense, guys. Those are our eyes and ears ahead of the main unit to get us ready in the event that their enemy is moving up on us. Especially true when we're in the priorities of work, right? We've just occupied, let's say, a patrol base, and we're in there, we're cutting down some vegetation, we're establishing our internal COC, getting ready to start operating out of the patrol base. There's a lot of work that is involved in occupying a patrol base initially, all right? We're not into that phase where we're on sleep cycles and, kicking out our first patrols yet. We just occupied the patrol base, we're setting in fields of fire, we're establishing positions, a whole bunch of stuff's going on. Kicking out those LPOPs up front is a good way of getting us advance notice of an enemy's impending approach, okay? So when I occupy this location here, I'm gonna be looking around, I'm seeing what I got, right? What is the enemy's most likely avenue of approach? How did I come into this patrol base, okay? What are the ways that I traveled into here? Does the enemy know we're in the area? That makes a big difference, right? If we're in an area that is contested and the enemy's on high alert, that's gonna make the enemy's situational awareness a lot greater than as opposed to we're behind the enemy's lines. The enemy has not typically taken contact from our side yet in that AO, so they're not likely expecting us to be back there, okay? They're gonna be more laxed, okay? So if I'm in a situation like here, and I'm looking for a place to set up my LPOPs, and I'm behind enemy lines where the enemy does not expect me to be, we got a heavily traveled trail off to the left of this creek here. We got the creek, and then we got a more wooded, branch-infested, viney area off to the right in the woods. Can they take any one of these routes? Absolutely, all right? But if we're behind enemy lines, the enemy is not expecting us to be, what do you think they're gonna be taking? They're probably going to be taking this trail over here, right? The easy route. Why would they go right down the middle of the creek and be wet from the balls down to their feet, or be hacking with machetes through the woodland environment over here when they could just take this nice easy trail when they're back in the rear with the gear and they're not expecting contact from us, okay? So take those things into considerations, right? MET-TC dependent. You guys hear that all the time. If you're in a more heavily contested environment, obviously the enemy is going to be on a higher alert. Everything's fair game, okay? At that point, you just got to take a tactical assessment. What is the enemy's most likely avenue approach, right? How are we going to expect them to come in here? Okay, so when we're looking at how we're situated, let's take a patrol base, for instance. We tend to set up our patrol bases in areas that are in heavy vegetation, places where the enemy does not think a patrol base should be, right? That's ideally where we're going to set up a patrol base. But there was a way we got in there somehow, right? So what was that way? Is there a trail nearby? Is there, if you have a creek nearby, a water source, is there a crossing point at that creek like you see behind me where individual infantry, whether friendly or enemy, tend to walk across and cross that creek at that particular place, okay? We want to think about what is the most likely avenue of enemy approach coming to our patrol base or to our defense. And that is where we want to set up our LPOP. We want to get eyes on, both eyes and ears, to listen and see, okay? Sometimes those LPOPs are going to hear the enemy long before they ever see them. Regardless, those LPOPs can give our unit back at our patrol base, back at the defense, whatever the case may be, advanced warning that that enemy force is heading our way. We also got to take into consideration, we got to have comm with that LPOP, okay? Whether that's field phones or radios. Back in the day, field phones were the #1 priority for comms, okay? Closed communication, you weren't sending signals out there to compromise positions. Field phones are pretty damn reliable, all right? They do have some issues from time to time, but for the most part, they work pretty damn well. And just using field phones is just a great communication. The U.S. military, for whatever reason, has moved on to that. They think that's antiquated technology, and you don't see field phones around anymore, typically speaking. But armed prepared citizen Absolutely. You can use those field phones. It's a good piece of gear. I highly suggest you guys get invested in those. Secondary comm, back in the day, was radio, all right? So now it's essentially all radio, but the main point here is you got to have comm with that LPOP, okay? You also want to try to keep them within small arms engagement range of the rest of your guys. Why? Because you need to be able to support that LPOP if those dudes need to break contact. If they need to get back to the main unit, it's an oh shit factor. The enemy's coming. They've compromised us. They're on top of us. We're falling back. You need to be in small arms engagement range of that LPOP so that you can support those guys on their way back, all right? And making sure every swinging dick inside your new unit knows where those LPOPs are so we don't have any fratricide. So those are some of the biggest things to take into consideration when first establishing your LPOPs. What is the enemy's most likely avenue of approach? Okay, putting that LPOP in small arms engagement range, and also we got to have comm with that LPOP. Whether that's field phones or radio, we got to have a means of communication of that. Because that LPOP, remember, is our first line of defense. And in a heavily wooded environment, they're going to probably hear the enemy coming long before they ever see them. So they got to be able to get on that comm and let the unit know, hey, I got a possible enemy moving towards our location. You guys need to stand too.
LPOPs are usually manned by 2 or more individuals. We want to limit the amount of times we have guys moving to and from the patrol base or defense to the positions, because every time we do that, we risk detection from the enemy. With at least 2-man LPOPs, the men at that position can rotate out at 50% amongst themselves, meaning one man is on watch while the other is resting. Also, if you determine that a nearby hill offers the best possible position for your LPOP that you want to set in, don't be an idiot. Don't place your LPOP directly on top of the hill, silhouetting the position against the sky. If you need to place your LPOP on a hill, use the military crest of the hill so that your men's position is not skylined for the enemy to easily detect.
So once we've picked the prime location and we start putting our guys into an LPOP to observe the likely avenues of enemy approach, we want to establish comms with those guys. The whole purpose of that LPOP is to provide early warning for the rest of the unit, whether that's a squad or platoon. We got to get that advance notice of the enemy approach, okay? There's 2 general ways of communicating with LPOPs. One of them is kind of considered antiquated, but I'll tell you with 100% certainty, guys, wire communications is still very viable in modern warfare, right? And guess what? You're not sending out a radio signal out there that can be tracked or, intercepted. So, wire comms between you and your primary unit, whether that's a squad or a platoon, okay? I have 2 examples right here. This is by no means the only example. There's other field phones out there. In my opinion, though, this one's the most viable for squad level operations, and that is the TA1 field phone. It comes in a waterproof contained case like this. All right, so the field phone goes in there, and all you really need is the field phone. It has its own connector that hooks up to the main wire.
And to hook these up, you just have to attach each end of the wire to the TA1 field phone connector. You can also splice into the wire and attach additional phones to the same wire. Now obviously the biggest weak point here for this system is the weight of the spool and the phones. One complete spool and reel weighs just over 16 pounds, and each individual TA1 field phone with case weighs approximately 3 pounds each. With the given mission of your unit, you have to weigh the positives versus the negatives of bringing these on the mission with you. Obviously they provide a great, secure, and reliable means of communication for you as a small unit leader. The guys are going to have to pack these out, and that's in addition to all their standard combat load and whatever the mission-specific gear that they're already tasked with carrying.
It also has a strap that you can use to tie around a tree, a log, something like that to prop the field phone up so it's not laying on its side, okay? And then again, it locks, waterproof case. And when you're not using the field phone, you can set it back inside there, okay? Your actual field phone itself, these are not powered by batteries. They literally run off of their own power, so you don't have to worry about changing out batteries. They have 2 buttons. One of them is a transmitting button, so you're literally holding down and talking to the other position. The other one is a ringer, and there's an adjustment knob here, or adjustment dial on the bottom of the phone, where you can increase the loudness of the ring on the other end. So I've got 2 field phones already set up here so that you guys can get an idea of what they sound like. Right, and again, I can adjust the loudness of the dial or the ring So if I'm in my position and I don't want, you know, if I think that field phone ring is too loud, I can turn it down. You guys hear how much lower that is? And then again, I can turn it up if I need to increase it. So great, well thought out piece of gear, guys. Additionally, they have these windows on them, and inside the window is a luminescent dial. And so if it's at nighttime and you're getting a call, when you push the transmit button, it resets. But when you get a call on this from the other phone, it'll flip that dial and it'll let you know that the other phone tried to contact you. Okay, so again, great, well thought out pieces of gear, absolutely still viable in my opinion. Now you're gonna have these dudes that are gonna be like, oh, the enemy can tap into your field phone. Guys, where are we setting up these LPOPs? Like I told you, we wanna try to typically put them within small arms range of main body, okay, so that we can support them if need be, and they're not gonna be that far away from the position. You can camouflage your wire. Sometimes, you know, we've set these wires up at training at One Shepherd where we've actually used the wire as a hand guide to get to the position at night when it's harder to find it. So, you know, yeah, you increase the possibility of detection that way, but again, these LPOPs aren't too far away from the main body. You know, the possibility of the enemy slipping in between your LPOP and your main unit, tapping into your line is very few and far between, okay? So just be realistic there. So in my opinion, guys, the benefits of using these wire and field phone capabilities outweighs the negatives, all right? Other option, more modern option, are radios. So you're like your PRC 152s. Here's a civilian equivalent, well, kind of equivalent. I use that term equivalent loosely, right? It looks like a 152. These are not encrypted whatsoever, and they're sending out signals, right? That can be intercepted. Enemy can listen in on your communications or even possibly track your locations, okay? So I think, you know, these type of radios, especially the civilian ones, are a distant second to field phones when it comes to LPOP communication, okay? But still, regardless, you know, radio comms is another solution for comms with your LPOP. So that are your typical means of communications between your unit and your LPOP. Generally, your LPOP is going to be too far to try to do any type of hand and arm signals. Plus, you're assuming that guys are going to be that vigilant to where they can keep eyes on that LPOP. Typically, it's going to be just out of view of, you know, the main body of the unit, especially in these heavy wooded environments. Next, we're going to talk about gear. So obviously mission dictates on a lot of things, but LPOPs, there tends to be some universal gear that is applicable in like 90% of situations, okay? So we're going to talk about some of that stuff. So first and foremost, land nav equipment. Your guys need to know where they are in relation to friendly units, and if they detect something, whether that be by visual or auditory, they need to be able to try to determine where that enemy contact is so that they can radio it up to their respective hire, whether that be a squad leader or a platoon commander, whatever the case may be, okay? So a map. Make sure your LPOP has a map so that they can look at the map. They know exactly where they are on the map. And when they find those enemy detections, they can report where they believe they are on this map, all right? A GPS so that they can get their exact grid. When they call in their location to their respective hire, they want to be as accurate as humanly possible on where they are. So they can get their grid off their GPS, plot it on their map, make sure it's accurate, and report it back up to hire. A compass. So you get a visual sighting of the enemy, or maybe even auditory sighting of the enemy. You can report it back. Hey, I have an enemy, you know, possible sighting. They're at approximately 160 degrees from my pause at 200 meters out. You know, something along those lines, all right? Having a compass will be able to facilitate those guys being able to report that in, all right? So that's pretty much the essentials for land nav equipment for that LPOP. Those guys should have that so they can report enemy sightings accurately and be able to report their position to minimize that fratricide and just increase situational awareness to all friendly units. Observation equipment. So obviously you have the optic on your scope if it's magnified, all right, that's one means. Having some binoculars is another means, all right, whether they be, you know, big giant binoculars like these Steiner Marines I have right here, or even a spotting scope for that matter. Just having some sort of magnified optic that allows those guys to visually get detection of enemy personnel and positively identify them on whether or not they're friendly or enemy. On that note, night vision equipment. You need to have night vision. If you have thermal assets, absolutely. Make sure those guys have those capabilities out there to better facilitate them being able to detect those enemy threats, all right? Every warfighter should have on them note-taking equipment, okay? So if they do see enemy and they need to report it in, they can put it in a salute report format and send it up, all right? So just some means to record whatever the enemy detection is. Tools. So let's talk about tools to help construct your position. So I recently put out an infantryman's guide over infantry-related tools, and some of them are the same. Okay, you don't need all of them, but some of these will be applicable. So an e-tool, there are definitely situations where an e-tool is warranted. All right, whether you need to move some earth. I'm not talking about building giant, elaborate fighting positions at an LPOP, but sometimes you do need to dig something. All right, maybe you need to dig a cat hole to take a shit on it because your LPOP is out there for a few hours and your guy has to go. Right, you just don't want to shit on the ground for everybody to smell. Dig a cat hole, shit it, and cover it back up. All right, so an e-tool definitely comes into play. Some other things that are very applicable to LPOPs. So one of those is a folding saw. This thing, in my opinion, is absolutely necessary. These are phenomenal pieces of gear, and LPOP should absolutely have this because you're going to have to cut away vegetation at times to better increase your observation of a given point, okay? Don't let things like a small branch keep you from occupying the best possible location for your LPOP. So carrying a small little portable handsaw like this, man, this increases your capabilities tenfold. These things are just absolutely amazing. They weigh practically nothing, easily man portable, and you can pack it away and stow it in your gear just like you see right here. Takes up hardly any space on my gear. Another thing with the same purpose, but just for smaller situations, maybe some pruning shears. All right, clipping away again some of these smaller branches. Some pruning shears can do the job. And again, they're lightweight, man portable, and don't take up much space on your gear. So that's pretty much it for kind of the universal gear that I can think of off the top of my head. But those are pretty synonymous with LPOPs. If you guys are going to occupy an LPOP, I would suggest that you have those type of tools on you so that your guys can be maximize their efficiency in that LPOP. All right, gentlemen, one of the last things I'm going to cover for an LPOP is just camouflaging it, okay? Obviously, camouflage is a very important aspect to a listening post observation post. Again, primary mission of this LPOP is to give early warning to the rest of the unit that an enemy is approaching, okay? And you can't achieve that unless the enemy does not see or detect you. And one of the ways we can help improve an LPOP's position is with the use of proper camouflage, right? With a mixture of the natural stuff that's already out there, all right, and then maybe some added artificial gear, okay? If you don't have this stuff on your person, hey, it doesn't mean you don't set up an LPOP. This is all stuff that's nice to have and can really help enhance your LPOP. But if you don't have it on your squad or patrol, so be it. Just make do without it, all right? Use more natural vegetation in construction of your LPOP as opposed to artificial stuff. But ideally, you want to use a mixture of the artificial stuff as well as the natural stuff, okay? So what are some examples of the artificial camouflage that we can use to enhance our position? Well, first and foremost, you guys see that I typically wear a what's called a sniper veil around my neck. This isn't just because I want to wear it and think it looks cool and it helps absorb sweat around my neck, but these are very long, all right, have some width to them, and can be used to plus up a position. All right, you put this within the backdrop of the vegetation, and it helps break up your natural silhouette and help obscure you from visual detection from the enemy, okay? So a sniper veil is a great piece of gear. Highly recommend that guys keep these on them, especially for individual infantrymen that don't have much space in their individual packs or on patrol. You know, just having these around your neck, hey, it's right there, helps absorb the sweat, and it doubles as, you know, added camouflage when needed, all right? So a sniper veil is a good viable option for an individual infantryman. Some other artificial camouflage, just a small cami netting, all right? I can't remember the dimensions on these, but these aren't very big, maybe like 8 by 10 feet or so, but they're just small cami nets, and they can be cut and tailored to your specific likings on how big you want these. These aren't, you know, cami nettings that are so big that they cover, you know, vehicles. These are smaller. These are for individual infantry positions. Obviously, you want your cami netting to be reflective of the environment you're in, all right? So this is like a multi-cam type cami netting, has a lot of tan and you know, brown and light green into it, and it actually is very effective for this time of year right now. You guys can see the leaves on the ground, and it blends in very well to this particular time of the year where I'm at filming this video. Here's another. So later on in the season, when the vegetation's a lot darker green and more vibrant green, you know, this isn't going to be as effective as probably something like this that has darker greens in it, more brown, and as such, okay? So, you know, obviously use the stuff that's appropriate for the given environment. There's other options right here. This is just a really lightweight cami netting, and it fits in a small bag, and this bag is about the size of the pouch on an Alice pack. How do I know that? Because I've taken it multiple times to training at One Shepherd, as well as field in the Marine Corps, and I have stuck this in the pouch. That pouch, it's about the same size as the exterior pouch on an Alice pack, and just a good all-around size. So, and it's relatively lightweight, guys. It does not, it takes up space, obviously, okay, but it doesn't take up that much weight. Here's another option. This is an older Italian military cami netting, so it's literally just burlap and net, but it's more spacious, so it allows you to stick in more natural vegetation, and it just, you know, it's man portable. The little cover right here is attached to the cami netting, so it, you know, has its own retention system per se, but it just helps cover an individual position. And you know, I got this on the surplus market relatively cheap, and I've taken it to places like Winter Forge, and it's worked well for me. So that's an option as well. Other options are, this thing is called a ghost hood. Ghost hood in the con camo camouflage, very lightweight, portable, but it's essentially just a camouflage cape that one can throw over them to help plus up their position, as well as break up the human silhouette. And it's just a very effective, lightweight piece of gear, help plus up my individual camouflage in a listening post, observation post. So those are some of the options that you can utilize to help plus up your camouflage. Are these the only options? No. There are some options for you. You guys get the idea, get the point. But obviously camouflaging your LPOP is a very important task, and it needs to be done appropriately. And don't forget to, if it allows, all right, if situation allows, check out your position from the enemy's vantage point to make sure that you're not missing something.
Lastly, make sure your individual infantrymen manning those LPOPs are fully camouflaged. Shiny objects should be policed up, and reflective glass, such as that on the weapon optics and binos, is concealed with either tape or a kill flash. Additionally, the men at the LPOP should have on an appropriate camouflage pattern, and all exposed skin should be covered up with preferably camouflage face paint.
Alpha 2-1, Alpha. So what kind of weapon system should you put at your LPOP? Well, to be quite frank, whatever you want. I would stay clear of putting crew serve weapons, such as, you know, your medium machine guns there, but any type of individual rifle and or grenade launcher, automatic rifles or light machine guns are absolutely feasible, okay? Designated marksman type weapon systems, like an AR-10 that's scoped, absolutely a viable option for an LPOP. Well, that's it, gentlemen. That completes this episode of Infantryman's Guide over listening posts and observation posts, aka LPOPs. If you guys are liking what you're seeing, don't forget to check out my channel and subscribe. I've already done several videos on infantry-related content, and I plan to do several more in the future. Thanks for watching. Keep fighting the good fight, and Semper Fidelis.